Welcome, everyone. Welcome to Ask the Experts. Today, we're having Manjit on, and he is going to be talking to us about JV partnerships. This is an important topic, and so
Hmm.
I'm so happy to have you on. Thank you for coming on, Manjit.
Yeah, you bet. Thank you for having me.
So let's start with just tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm a full-time real estate investor in Winnipeg. Where I'm born and raised, and I'm here. I run the business with my wife Jill, and we have two kids. And yeah, we've been doing real estate for since 2008. Which I started buying real estate at 23 years old. I'm 37 now, and got that real estate bug early on. I was working as a financial planner then, and I decided to kind of give up my license and pursue real estate investing because I was really enjoying it more than more of the commission selling financial products and life insurance. So that led me to here, and obviously I started on a part-time basis because we did have a job at one point, and but we've been full-time for almost 8 years now.
Oh, wow, that's amazing. So you guys definitely come with a lot of experience.
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
So let's get started with let's start with just a very basic question about JV partnerships. Um, just let's start with like the most generic one. You know, how like what skills have you looked into a person when you're trying to find the right JV partner?
Yeah. Well, skills are like what characteristics I really look
Characteristics.
for.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah. So what I really look for is obviously somebody that has liquid funds. And one thing that I've really developed over the years is really looking at my what I call your avatar, right? Who is your perfect JV partner? Who's your perfect ideal candidate? And it's usually comes down to somebody that obviously is a bit older, maybe 25, 30 plus for sure, because usually they've been working, they got a career. I personally, when I do joint ventures, they're mostly on our buy and holds, on our rental properties. I don't do JVs on flips or infill projects that we do. So I'll look for somebody that, obviously has a good solid career or business that can get qualified at the bank, that maybe they have a home, they're married, because I usually find people that are married or have kids, they're just more committed to making money. And also what I learned from being a financial planner for 4 years previous to real estate, people that are just dissatisfied. They're dissatisfied with the returns maybe that they're getting in their RSPs or their GICs or seg funds or mutual funds or stocks or whatever they're investing in. And so I look for these types of characteristics for people. And of course, where people have a genuine interest in real estate, but they don't really know how to get started, right? They don't have a power team. They don't maybe know how to run the numbers. They don't know how to find a deal. And so when I look for these types of characteristics, I find that raising money from a JV partner is just that more fluid. That's it's just more natural. And then myself or other people here on the call, being the active investor, I find that it's easier to find money and actually close investors when you look for those characteristics in somebody.
Okay, great. So I'm curious, why do you only use partners for your buy and holds and let's say not flips? Like what's the strategy behind that?
Yeah, so in the beginning, I did start using JV partners where we would do like a classic 50-50. So I did do that where, we made 30 or 40 grand net profit on a flip. I would split that 50-50. But as I got more experience, I just found more money, right? You get more experience, you find more money. And then you kind of realize like, hey, why am I giving half my profit up? I could just pay somebody 10% on their money and make obviously more money in our pocket and still give somebody a good return, right? Like 10%, 12% per annum. So in the beginning, yes, I was doing JVs on flips, but I just found out there's just so much money in the market right now that you don't need to do a JV on a flip unless that's the last thing, that's the only thing you can find, or you're very new, you don't have much experience that you might have to. But I think honestly, if you look hard enough, you can find cheaper money, so you don't have to do a joint venture 50-50 on a flip. So that's why we don't do it.
Yeah, and a great point actually. It's also basically what you're saying is it kind of comes with the reputation, right? As you build your reputation and you show like how well things are going, people start throwing money at you. Just take my money and make
Yeah.
me something, you know?
Yeah, exactly. No, for sure, for sure. And then, if you do brand yourself properly, and you're sharing your numbers, or you're open to doing that sort of stuff, I find that, yeah, money definitely just flows. And I find too, when you start looking for it, or when you're not actively looking for it as much, I don't know why, it just comes in, right? It comes in from different sources. So, but yeah, definitely there is a lot of money out there in the market. So it's finding it's easy. Like, if there's a challenge, it's probably finding the deal, but it's usually not the money.
100%, completely agree. Let me just see. Anyone have any questions? I felt like April unmuted and maybe wanted a question, so I'll give her a minute. Anyone a minute if they want to ask. Going once, going twice. Okay, I'm gonna go for the next one then. So, so I think always the hardest part for people, because normally, especially when you're new, you're going to people that you know, right? So, what do you recommend for people when you're approaching a person with money? Or approaching, yeah, like you said, normally you're finding is obviously you're the active investor, so you're finding people with money. So, how do you approach them?
How do I approach
And
people
get
with
the
money?
conversation, yeah, to get the conversation started, to even talk about JVs. Like, what is your approach?
Yeah. Yeah, it's just like selling anything, right? You're fact finding, or you're doing discovery, right? You're figuring out like what their needs are, where they are currently at, if they've ever invested before, if they have invested before, what they liked about it, what they disliked about it, what are they looking for in an ideal return? When do they want their money back? What sort of security they're looking for. So again, we obviously, and I'll talk about this later, but we teach me really a formula and a process. I do consult others on how to do this, what sort of questions to ask, and how to handle objections. But yeah, once you really figure out what to ask them, like I just mentioned, it'll just be easier to like weed out the tire kickers, and find out the ones that are actually serious, and that they're ready to go right now. They're ready to invest. They're ready to like give you 100, 200, 300, 400 grand of their capital to buy real estate. But I think it comes down to asking the questions, but also asking the right questions to discover if they're a good fit or not, and vice versa, right? You might not be a good fit for them, and vice versa. So you really just have to ask questions to find that out.
Mhm. Yeah, I completely agree. So, what are your qualifying questions that you like to ask?
So I have this sheet called the KYC. I know your client, and on that sheet it's a bit about what I just kind of mentioned, was like, have you invested before, right? If I were to find a property, what could you earmark for an investment, right? So usually people say like, oh, maybe 50K or 100 grand. If I were to find a property, Diana, when would you want to get started? Right. So that's an important one, because sometimes people are like, well, I don't want to start investing until next year. So you just kind of ask them, like, if it's now, well, that's great. Keep going down the list. Right. What's your risk tolerance? That's another one question I ask, because some people have a low risk tolerance. Right. And so you want to find that out too. And I ask them, what do they expect out of a relationship? Right. How do they see a joint venture happening in their eye? And at the same time, you got to educate them too. Sometimes people have no idea. They're like, I don't know, like, they have no idea. So that's where you got to lead them and educate them at the same time, as well as doing the presentation to actually bring them on board. You kind of have to do a hybrid meeting. But yeah, those are some of the questions that I ask. One important one is I like to ask if they've ever invested before, because if they have some investment experience, even if it's not in real estate, it's going to be easier for you to close that deal. It's going to be easier for you to close that investor, because you don't have to spend more time with them to make them comfortable and all that stuff. They're already familiar with investing and how it works.
Mhm. And so I'm just going to give a moment again to see if anyone has any questions that they would like to ask. Feel free to put up your hand or just unmute yourself and ask your question. Okay, I think everyone's good so far. So then my next question then is, like you talked about fear and risk tolerance. I think specifically with fear, what do you do to try to reduce the fear? Or for example, because that would probably be one of the things, like if the fear is too great, you probably like, this isn't probably for you. Like how do you try to reduce the fear and or qualify them, be like, you know what, actually I don't think this is for you. This is maybe too risky for you.
Hmm. Yeah, like well, the fear part, um, you want to show them your credibility. I think that's the biggest thing. If you have, even if you haven't done a lot of deals, maybe when people invest with you, yes, it is obviously deal dependent, but really it's sometimes just your character. Like, what kind of person are you? Are you a trustworthy person? Do they get along with you? Right? Do you meet their expectations that they're looking for? So just being a genuinely good person, overall good person with a good personality, positive, that's going to go a long ways. And then one thing is I really look for, well, what are your fears, and try to handle those questions. And if you or your deal can handle that, that's great. One biggest thing I can tell you in your audience is you need to have the right deal. If your deal is smoking and you're buying it at 60, 70 cents on the dollar, because that's really where you make your money in real estate, the deal itself, it's going to sell itself, right? So when people say like, hey, wow, I'm buying this with so much equity in it, that'll kind of alleviate a bit of the fear. The other thing is, if you're buying a property, again, this depends on if you're buying it cash or whatnot, but if you're buying it cash and you're flipping it, well, guess what? You can just put them on first position, and now they got security in there, right? So, you're kind of taking away one of those fears of like, hey, what if I just took off with your money, or the deal lost money? Well, first thing, you're on title. Second thing, you bought it under market value, and you can foreclose, worst case scenario. So again, you got to educate your person this, especially if they are a little bit fearful. And the other thing is, you got to share your network, right? If I'm raising money from you, I want you to know that I have a network of accountants, contractors, lawyers, stagers. So I got people at my arsenal that I can go to who are professionals in their field to help me run my business as a real estate investor, and really sell your power team to people. And so when they see that confidence, that'll alleviate some of the fear they might have, right? And some, again, fear is just an emotion, so you got to just really learn how to deal with it. But first, you need to discover what that fear is. If it's like, acknowledge it, and then try to handle that objection or whatnot the best you can.
Mm-hmm. Which I think you're leading to it, which is kind of good, is objections. So just curious on a general sense, because there's always what is it called? Like there's objections and there's kind of, I forgot the other term, but it's something like excuses, where they're just making excuses, but it's not really a valid, problem. How do
Mm-hmm.
you deal with that difference, or how do you, I mean, not deal with it, how do you figure out if it's an actual objection or if it's just like excuses that they're making because maybe the fear is too strong, or maybe they just don't even want to be a part of it?
Yeah. You know what? I haven't had much people that I feel that they're making excuses. So I don't know how to answer that. Usually, if I qualify them enough, I know they are legitimate. They are legitimate. So I mean, if I feel someone is just kind of just making up something, I just, I don't even try to handle it. I just say, okay, thank you. There's so much money out there. You don't have to worry or try to convince somebody.
Yeah.
Just go
Or
to
you
somebody
probably
that wants
figure
to
that
work with
out.
you.
You probably figure that out, I guess, like in your qualification.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. In my first initial, what I call my 15-minute call, my 15-minute qualifying call, I will figure that out. Or say if I meet somebody on Facebook, or I'm DMing them or whatever, I can just figure it out over Messenger. Okay, I just ask them some questions, and I can figure out if they're serious or not. And if they are, I'll give them the link to my calendar. And if they aren't, I'll just politely say, okay, well, nice meeting you. Let's be in touch in my group or something. So yeah, I don't, yeah, you don't want to spend time with those people. Like, definitely not. It's like, there's just too much energy involved there's just way more prospects out there that do want to invest.
Okay. And Dwayne, I'm not sure, did you have a question?
I was just gonna pipe up and say objections are complaints, right? Like a
That's what
complaint
it
is
is.
something that you can't really address, and an objection is like a legitimate concern that you need to overcome. So
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
No,
thank
for
you,
sure,
Dwayne.
for
That's
sure.
what I meant. Sorry, how that's what I was getting at. Dwayne knows because we're in the same mastermind. So so how do you help to identify between a complaint and an objection?
I guess just really hear from them and see what they're saying, right? Like if it sounds like a complaint, I guess, then I guess I'll just try to discover a bit more, ask them more questions, like what do you mean by that? Like, how would that make you feel, and why do you think that? And so stuff like that, right? And if it's objection, it's usually the same common ones I get. So for me, I know, because it's the objections that I get for, say, raising money are the same ones, like how's my money protected? How am I going to get it back? What's my security? What's my time frame? What if you take off to Mexico or something like crazy or whatever, right? So usually it's easier to distinguish that like real objections.
That's great. And so talking about that, then like now you're talking about finding the right deal, because I mean all these things, even finding the deal, finding the right JV partners, this all kind of has to go with communication and negotiation, right? So I'm curious, like, do you have any what techniques do you use when you're negotiating with people?
Like people in general, you mean?
For JVs, yeah. For like a JV, is there like how do you go about like structuring the deal, I guess, is basically the same thing, right? When you're talking to your JVs, like how do you go on to negotiate the structuring of your JV partnership? Or is it just like you already have a standard one and
you know what, I already have a standard, not much negotiating. Like I think if you come in with confidence and expectations, like you expect to do a 50-50 split, you expect to only pay 10% per annum, usually people won't negotiate. And if they do, you maybe haven't built enough authority with them, because then now they're like, oh, you just told me you've only done one deal or you've done no deal and you're asking me for $200,000. Well, you know what, I want 40% return, or something crazy. So I luckily haven't had much of those. But again, you want to create a win-win, right? So you don't want them taking all the biggest piece of the pie and you either. But again, you as the active partner, it's naturally that you will take more stake in the deal. Again, depending on if they're paying debt or equity or whatnot. So again, it's finding that right person and qualifying that right person, right? And you obviously don't want to be trying to negotiate with like a loan shark or something that just wants more and 4 points and wants 16% return, right? So you want to make sure you're talking to the right person. And the negotiating, I find I actually did a presentation on this a while ago called "How to Weed Out the Tire Kickers" and how to get more commitments quickly. Basically, it's just putting deadlines on things and saying, hey, you know what, I got this deal out to a few people right now, and unfortunately, for you, if you get back to me first before these two, I'm going to go with you. But just to let you know, we are kind of shopping this deal around Diana. Or, hey, if you get back to me first, I'll actually pay you a flat $1,500 from my profit on the split on top of the 12% per annum that I'm doing if you get back to me by end of day before these other two. So again, using some kind of sales strategies and techniques like that will help you negotiate getting quicker responses and say a better deal.
Oh yeah, those are all great points. So I wanted to get back to, because you said you counsel and you have, it sounds like, your strategy or your phases that you go through when you're doing a deal. I'm curious, like, what are the phases? You said you have like a 15-minute to qualify. What are the other phases that you go through to, for a JV partnership?
Yeah, so with the joint venture, I do what I call like a 15-minute, like a discovery call, just to quickly find out where they're at, if they want to invest right now, do they have the money, what are they looking to invest? So if I find out they check off my boxes, like they want to do this now, they have the capital, I find out how much capital they have, and they're ready to take action, then I'll set up like a second, like a presentation where I will share my actual deal if I have one, or just give them a, what I call like a credibility information package or presentation on my company, on the specific deal, what we're looking for, what sort of returns we give, what sort of security the investor could expect on their money. And then that call, so that's usually either in person or on Zoom or whatever. There I will get a verbal commitment. And if I got a verbal, I'll get them to sign like a letter of intent, saying like, they will borrow me or a joint venture with me, XYZ amount, like 100 grand or whatever. And then you just close the deal right there. And they send that money to your lawyer, and then you buy the deal or whatever you're doing. If you're flipping it, you're doing a buy and hold, is different structure.
So do you do any, is the letter of intent the only thing you do to qualify that they actually have the funds available? Like, have you ever actually come across a point where someone says they have the funds available and then they couldn't meet the deal, like they couldn't, meet the...
I have not personally, but I know others that have. So this is why during the qualifying, and when you do sign that letter of intent where they say they will loan you X amount of dollars, you do want to ask proof of funds for sure. You want to ask like, hey, you know what? And don't be shy about it, because I mean, if you're buying a deal and you're going to write a clean offer and this person's committed to you, you don't want to be losing your deposit or getting sued or whatever. And I've heard of all these other crazy stuff happening. So yeah, you do want to ask them like, hey, you know what? Can I see like a bank statement or line of credit statement where this money is going to come from? Once you see that, then you can get them to sign a letter of intent, and have that money sent over to your lawyer if it's a closing that's coming up very quick, right? If it's more like up in the air, like, great, you've committed $250,000, but I don't have a deal just yet, Diana, but I am going to go out and find one now. Then yes, you would get a letter of intent. And one thing actually comes to mind is you never want to rely on just one investor, because stuff like this does happen. They'll change their mind, they'll get cold feet. And I mean, I guess you could take them to court if you wanted to. I just find it's more of a pain. So you want to make sure your pipeline is full. So even if somebody says no or pulls out of the deal, well, guess what? You got other people that you can approach, right? And it actually gives that, what I find too, it's, there's that urgency piece to sales. It's like, hey, by the way, like, you know what, if you don't close on this, that's fine. I do have a few other people lined up. So again, people fear what they might lose, right? Naturally. So I find you want to keep your pipeline full too. You don't want to just rely on one person for your business. And it will give you more negotiation room when you are doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, great point. And I think that's also a great point that you made about the proof of funds, not being shy, because I feel a lot of people find that very hard and kind of get, if anything like that, shy or embarrassed, because it's like, oh, I'm getting into your personal life or something by seeing that, and they don't want to see it. So I think it's great that you said that, because like you said, it's like a deal you're putting together, and it's something that you can't just have fall through because someone says they had it and then, they don't have it or something happens.
Yeah, for sure. And I didn't do that in the beginning, but we did start doing it later down because, yeah, for sure, right? You don't want to be stuck there. And because I would hear horror stories of people pulling out of deals and the investor lost their deposit they put down because they wrote a clean offer based on this person's verbal commitment with no proof of funds. So then you learn very quickly what not to do.
Exactly. Are there any other things that you've heard of?
Sorry.
Yeah. Not like what not to do?
Nothing that comes to mind. I'm sure there is stuff for sure. You're right. Well, yeah, as an investor, you don't want to write a clean offer on a property if you don't have at least one, not even one, like I would say at least two people that have been committed to you. Because again, if that one person falls out, you want to make sure you have a backup, right? So I find a lot of investors will get gung-ho and be excited and just write a clean offer when they don't even have anybody committed.
Mm-hmm.
And I've heard several times people losing their deposit, or sometimes they lose their deposit and then the vendor sells the house and they sell it for 20 grand less. And well, guess what? They're going to go back. They're going to go after that investor for that difference. So it can get ugly. So you want to make sure when you are buying a deal, you got your pipeline full. Like for me, my whole business, I can go look into my CRM right now. It'll tell me exactly where my investors are, how many JV partners I have, how many RSP investors I have, how many interest-only investors that I have, how many have invested with me, how many are just prospects, how many I've been referred to through financial planners. So I can get a snapshot of my business anytime on my CRM, which is like my Rolodex. And so I want to make sure that if I'm looking at a deal and I'm writing an offer, well, I want to look at my CRM to be like, okay, well, I got a few people right here ready to go. Well, let me just call them and confirm they're ready to go to buy another deal or whatnot.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense. It is. Yeah, you definitely do want to have your Rolodex of people, like you said, because the last thing you want is to be left hanging and lose your deposit or anything. I'm going to give a moment. Does anyone have any questions that they would like to ask? And I feel like some people are being shy because normally there are people asking. So guys, don't feel shy, or you can put it in the comments if you want to ask what questions you have. Okay. April says, great.
I was just going to add to the verification of funds. Sometimes people are also over exuberant. Shall we say they have a tendency to kind of embellish what's in their accounts. They haven't really done the math. And and then you go through the actual account statements and it's like, what you thought was here is not here. So I'm actually in the mortgage business as well. So
exactly.
I run into that occasionally, right? What you thought you had down, you don't have it.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? This goes back to my point on educating. So one of the questions I ask a potential prospect is, how much liquid funds do you have right now? Sometimes people don't even know what liquid means, but I'll tell them, you know, where's this money coming from exactly? Oh, it's coming from my HELOC. Okay, well, great. That's pretty liquid. You know, or it's coming from my TFSA or my high interest savings account. Okay, well, that's pretty liquid. Or, you know, sometimes it'll be like, it's in crypto. Well, you know, probably not as liquid. You know, or hey, it'll be coming from my house, but I don't have a refinance done. So I got to get an appraisal. I got to go to the bank. I got to make sure I can even get one. Okay, well, that's not liquid, right? So you have it. Yeah, you do have equity there because you just told me your house is almost paid off. So that's great. But now, again, you know, like Dwayne was saying, you got to ask that. You got to find out, like, where it's liquid, great. Well, where's the money coming from? So you as the investor should know, or you just learn to know what to ask. But yeah, that is very important, is the funds do need to be liquid or pretty liquid when you are about to lift your conditions.
Yeah, exactly.
Or close on the deal, I should say.
Yeah. How much time do you give between, like when you're finding your JVs or finalizing, I guess it would be, right? When you're finalizing, like how much time do you give between, like once you get your deal, like do you have a specific closing, like you try to do your closing with a specific time frame just to like line up your JVs?
So I'll give you a bird's eye view of how I do this. And again, I go through my whole system like in an 8-week program, which I'll talk about. But when I do a JV and I do it on a buy and hold, because again, I don't do JVs on flips, and I don't advise people to do it either because money's so cheap. When you do a JV and you're buying a rental property, either a BRRRR or, you know, something that's a bit under market value, but it's cash flow positive, you want to make sure, I like to have 2 to 3 people pre-approved at the bank within a 90-day period, all the time. So right now, like I probably have 4 or 5 potential JV partners that have gone to the bank. They know what they're pre-approved for. So when I know when a deal comes up, I'm ready to go. They're going to go write the offer. They're going to buy the property. I'm going to register a bare trust agreement. I'm going to be 50% owner of that property. So I tell newer investors, I tell them, like, you want to have at least 2 to 3 people, or I mean, even 1 obviously to start, but you want to have the more people that you have pre-approved at the bank that have verbally told you that they want a JV with you on a rental property where they own 50% and they're the money partner, you're the working partner. That's the position you want to be in, because you never know. Because I've lost out on deals early on in my career because I didn't have someone pre-approved, and a deal came up, and instead of writing a 5-day condition, like, you usually do 5-day condition, then in that 5 days, I'm scrambling now to even find somebody. And then when I do find somebody, now I got to ask for an extension. So how I've overcome that is I just make sure I always have people pre-approved, because then I can just get them to write the offer when I do find a property on the market. Or if I write the offer, I just assign it over to them, and then they can go to the bank, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And just for the viewers, I don't know if, oh yeah, sorry, Dwayne had a question.
What's a bare trust agreement?
I was just gonna say, I was like, I don't know if people know what that is.
Oh yeah. So a bare trust agreement is like, it's just a legal document that is drawn up by a lawyer, where essentially you and your JV partner, who's going on the mortgage and title, because that's their security in the money, they're essentially signing that, saying that you both are holding the property in trust with one another. And once you actually close on the property, or once they close on the property, a few weeks after, you want to register this on title, like a caveat or a lien. So they can't just go sell it under your belt. And it's a legal document, and you show it to your accountant, and that is legally your property, and you own 50% or 60% if that's what you negotiated. And this is how you're going to be able to scale your portfolio, because you're not going to be on the mortgage or title on these deals. And people in my people that I consult, they're probably buying on average between 5 to 10 properties every single year using this system, using this process of using a bare trust and a joint venture agreement, and buying real estate 100% with other people's money and credit. But yeah, that's what a bare trust is.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
And just to give same thing the viewers an understanding, so how does that differ from a JV agreement?
So a JV agreement is more where you're talking about the day-to-day operations of, like, and again, there will be a little bit of overlap, but a JV is more of like, hey, this is my responsibility. I'm responsible for the accounting, for the property management, for the, repairs or managing this or that, leasing the property. On a JV agreement, you might put like your exit strategy. So our exit strategy, in 5 years, we're 100% going to sell it, or we're going to refinance the property, and you're the JV, the money partner is going to get the money back. So things like that is what you put in the JV agreement. The bare trust, that's more of, what's the ownership stake, who put what into the deal, like money wise. And again, it's just a trust agreement where you're registering it. So there's a little bit of similarities, but you still need both of them when you're buying properties.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so the bare trust is more related to the property, and the JV agreement is related to the actual
day-to-day
responsibilities between.
Yep.
Yeah. Any other questions? Does anyone have any questions? Everyone's very shy today. Everyone's in hiding, or
maybe
in summer mode. Yeah, you probably have answered it. Yeah, because you've given a lot of information for sure.
I've got a question. It's not necessarily about the contract, but just on how to start a process on a property.
Sure.
So I heard from my lawyer that you can, let's say you're putting out offers and you don't want to put them either in your personal or in your corp's name because you don't know which partner you're going to close with or in which corp you're going to close with yet. When you're writing an offer to purchase or agreement to purchase and sale, so APS, can you just put, let's say, your name in trust, and then on closing date, you direct your lawyers to whatever you line everything up in the meantime, and then you direct your lawyers to whichever partner or corp you close in?
Yeah, that kind of sounds like, more of an assignment clause, the way you're describing it. I guess if your lawyer, I've never done it that way. If your lawyer is advising you and you can, for sure, they would know better. But that, to me, that kind of sounds like an assignment where you put, Manjit's going to buy it, or Manjit can make it's assignable to transfer into someone else's name on or before closing, a person, another firm or entity. So kind of similar what you're saying, but the wording might be different.
Yeah, well, the reason I'm asking is because an assignment is a clause in your agreement of purchase and sale. An APS my understanding is that when you put it in trust, you can't close let's say my full name is Taras Shved in trust. Like I can't close like that. That's not a legal person or entity. It's just I am in trust to direct who's right. So that's the difference where like if necessary, or just streamline things with realtors or typically you would do that with a realtor. I guess a wholesaler would assign it directly to wherever you'd like, just to have a cleaner looking offer, or I guess maybe an easier offer on the eyes for the sellers or partners.
I can answer that question for you if you want, because actually I'm doing that right now.
Okay.
And Terry, if you want to know, actually, we spoke about that in our wholesaling when we had Sean on. He spoke about it, but I'll briefly tell you, and I'll send you the link afterwards. Basically, you actually don't need an assignment clause in there. You don't need to put any of that. You can put it under your name completely. And all you do is you tell your lawyer, hey, this person isn't buying it. Actually, this corporation is. And then that's when you're setting up the corporation. That's exactly what we're doing right now, actually, with our next flip. I just put it under my corporation that doesn't do flips, but just to put the purchase agreement in. And what you do is you just tell the lawyer, hey, actually, this is the corporation that's going to be buying it. You don't need to put any in trust. You don't need to have an assignment clause. You don't need to do any of that. So you don't have to worry about it. Just a regular APS, and you just let your lawyer know. Even when you're assigning contracts, actually, you don't need to have any assignment clause. You just use the assignment document. I don't know what the number is, but you don't need any of that stuff. People, for some reason, do it for, I don't know, like extra security.
Yeah, I guess maybe just to have it very blatantly for the buyer or for the seller.
Some provinces have a clause too in the standard offer to purchase that contracts are automatically assignable. So like in Manitoba they are, but again, people put that just in case, right? If you're not using the standard realtor offer to purchase.
Yeah, that's the same in Ontario, actually. Yeah. In Ontario is the exact same. Contracts are automatically assignable, so you actually don't even need those assignment clauses. But I'll send you the link, Terry, for the wholesaling one with Sean Quigg, who answered that. He was a lawyer. I don't know if you know him. So yeah, you probably will want to listen to that.
Got it. Thank you.
No problem. Anyone else have any other questions they would like to ask? Going once. Going.
I've got in it too, but I don't think we have time for it. I was just gonna ask because I came onto the call late a little bit. I was wondering just the process on how you approach your potential JVs, like your warm contact who's expressed interest in partnering with you. How do you go from okay, I'll let you know, to okay, let's this is what I want to execute on?
You mean how do you get just a commitment right away?
No, not the commitment. So for example, the last flip I sold, the person who bought it, the buyer, actually approached me afterwards and said, hey, do you know anything about investments? And I said, yes. And he said, yeah, let's talk about it. I'd like to invest. I have so-and-so and so on. And so I got a verbal agreement. So now how do I go from, because I'm this is not a warm contact. This is not an investor. This is not anybody I've known or anything like that. How do I go from, okay, cool, interest to, okay, cool, commitment? And then let's say from commitment to, look, I have this property. How do we execute?
Okay. So would this be for a flip or a rental?
It would be for a flip. I mean, I have a bunch of options. So I have a severance and a flip that I'm looking to fund. And those are all options because typically JVs you're the so-called professional of the two. So you're the one who's directing. So they don't know what they want. They just want to return on their money. So it's either or. But I guess it's kind of the same thing because you acquire something and sell.
Yeah. So, I mean, if they're giving you 100% cash to buy this property or this flip, you do want to get and I did mention this on the call, but you want to get a letter of intent where basically, they're just signing something. It is official but non-official, but it's basically saying that, hey, they intend to lend you $300,000 of their money to buy a deal. So at least you get that, and for them, it shows them that you're serious, that they're serious. And then, of course, you want to get a proof of funds too, right? You want to move it from a verbal to that, and then you obviously maybe you already have the deal, or then you can at least start looking for a deal.
Okay. And a letter of intent gives us what?
That's just basically, it's just an agreement, like a legal doc that says they're verbally committing and on paper to lend you money, right? To lend you money to work with you on or at a specific date, and lending you, say, $100,000 or $200,000. And again, there's many variations of letter of intent, so it depends how extensive you want to go. But it's just kind of a non-official way of saying, hey, you guys are serious and you want to work together.
Okay.
The other thing you can do is, if you have the deal, say, okay, great. Well, you know what? Let's get the process started. Why don't you go see your lawyer? I'll go see my lawyer. If they're going to register a first mortgage, well, then they would bring that money into their lawyer. Their lawyer would transfer it to your lawyer, and then boom, you either register a mortgage or a promissory note, or however you're structuring it, and then you use that money to go buy the property.
Okay. Now for proof of funds. So the first part I understand. Now for proof of funds, how do we make sure we do that? Because, for example, when I'm taking on a flip on my own and I send my proof of funds to my lender, their criteria seems very loose to me. And I guess they're less worried because of their own ways to secure it. But how would that work for me? So, like, my understanding is just a screenshot of an account is easy to forge, which I'm not saying you would necessarily want to, but still to protect yourself.
You don't want to get a screenshot. You want to get a downloaded PDF from the online source. So if it's a line of credit statement, if it's a say high interest savings account, or wherever the money is sitting, you want to make sure that you get a download from the actual company, like if it's RBC or wherever, so that you can see if it's legitimate. Yeah, it's not just a screenshot.
Also, even another thing that some people do is you can actually request them to send a statement from the bank, and the bank puts their stamp on it, which is not as easy to forge that kind of stuff too. So I think that's everyone's questions. I think so. So Manjit, thanks so much for coming on. You provided such great information, and I know everyone got a lot of value. Would you like to provide your contact information and talk about your course if anyone's interested in getting involved in your program?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, definitely. If you want to stay connected with me, feel free to add me on Facebook if we're not already connected. And if you want to stay, in touch with me and some of my content, I do actually do a lot of Facebook Lives, webinars, interviews in my public group called Canadian Real Estate Investing with Cash, Joint Ventures, and Private Deals, which is the topics of discussion I talk a lot about. And there's probably close to 3,000 people in the group now. And so, yeah, we started it last year. So, you can actually go add me. You can go to my profile. You'll see you can click on my photo banner. It'll give you the link to the group. And then obviously, if you want to either improve and learn a proven model in a step-by-step process, everything down to the approach, the close, the qualifying, the legal documents required and how to execute it when it comes to raising capital, raising private money, using other people's money, joint ventures, or even finding off-market deals, because we do teach 9 different methods of doing that. I do run a 8-week program, which is all online, where I actually show you my step-by-step process, which has led me to buy and sell close to 130 properties now in 13 years and raise over $40 million of capital. So it's a great program. I think there's about 170 investors in it all across Canada. So if you want to learn more, again, you can DM me or even go to prosperpath.com to learn more. And yeah, I'd love to share a little bit more about that if you're looking to just kind of improve your real estate business from where it is right now to where maybe you want it to be in the next 12 months.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And your contact information, where can people reach you at? What's your Facebook account?
Just my first name, last name, Manjit Rukhra.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you everyone for coming on. Thank you, Manjit. It was really great. All the information you provided, it had a lot of value.
Thanks, guys. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you. We'll see everyone at the next Ask the Experts. Have a good rest of your weekend. Bye, everyone.
Thanks, Dan.
Take care, guys.